all of our visitors. So, board, snow days have ramifications. And if you would get your agendas out, we need to make some modifications to our agenda. And then, after that, to make sure that we're legal, we'll have a motion, either accept or reject. So going through, underneath presentations, the homeless project will be moved to number 1. And the middle college presentation will be moved to number 2. Moving on down to the consent calendar under 6, just remove personnel. There is nothing to report on tonight. If you look at B, under free and reduced facilities request, number 2 is Sun Urco, and it's Student Conflict Resolution Workshop. Student Conflict Resolution Workshop. Moving down under consent agenda to B, please remove, under E, remove remove budget, board budget update. And I am thinking, yes. Oh, under correspondence, that would be 15. If you look at number 3, it says Parkrose Educational Foundation, and it should read Parkrose Faculty Association. And under 13, action item, under D, it says accept, reject district calendar 2018-19. That will be removed from the agenda for this evening. And I do believe I got it all. Oh, and yes, we have 2 correspondences to add. We have the Metro, no, we already have that one. We're okay correspondence-wise. Okay, so if I could hear a motion to approve the adjusted agenda.
I move that we approve the amendments to the agenda as stated by the chair.
I second.
Thank you. You're hearing a motion and a second. You can speak first, Sarah, if you have anything to say.
I'm good.
Okay, Dave, then let's take a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. So, we are back into regular board meeting, and we begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. And I would start it myself tonight. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, Carol. So, Danny Nguyen is absent tonight. Is anybody picking up his?
They both forgot.
They both forgot.
Yeah.
Okay, we will move off of the ASB report directly into presentations. And I believe that Zachary and students, are you ready to report?
I think so.
Okay, it's yours.
All right. So I don't know if we're gonna take the full 10 minutes, but we can talk about kind of what went on this year. And of course, questions. Oh, we have time. All right, so this was our homeless project for this year. And I'll just kind of go through some of the pictures that we have for organizing things. And if I could let these guys speak maybe about what the homeless project is, and then we kind of ask them some questions. What is the homeless project?
The homeless project is a bunch of students where we come together to help the community and those who are in need. So basically, we make hygiene products, like let's say toothbrushes, shaving cream. So all those good stuff for them. And yeah.
Is it just hygiene packs that we donate as well?
No, we donate like used clothes for them to have, like socks and like sweaters and pants, and sometimes we'll have like more than like gloves and stuff, and, like shaving like stuff, but that's all we get. Sometimes we don't get that much donations.
Also, each student has their own little job. For instance, me, I would call to see who would like to donate, or for this year or next year. And there was other students who were organizing the hygiene products and stuff.
And then, of course, when we have it all, where do we go? We do. So we visit, with the clothing, we drop them off at Portland Rescue Mission. And then the hygiene packs go to Transitions Project, which is specifically Doreen's place, which is a shelter. It's the nice new one right across from the old train station. And
okay, yeah.
so that's a men's only shelter, a lot of veterans, a lot of, kind of picking themselves up. So this is the donations. That's what the hygiene pack specifically goes to that group. So we got some other shots of.
Sure.
And what does the homeless project mean to you? What does it mean?
To me, it's a chance to help those who need it, let's say me, for instance, when I was younger, I didn't have much, people wasn't able to donate to me or help me out for my issues, but then, as I grow, I was like, you know what, I want to be able to help those, if no one helped me, I want to help those, and
Well, to me it means a lot because I've been doing this for like 3 years now. I first started when my sister introduced me to PACE, and then from PACE, I just started liking everything they did, like the homeless shelter, and like everything that was involved with the school. And it's like more of a family because you help other people, you don't necessarily help yourself, and like you feel good for yourself after you do it.
I don't really know what else to say. This is our shot to this year. So this is transition. PACE, when it was in existence, had done this for, I think, 35 years. The project is older than I am. Like it's.
Oh, now wait a second.
It
truly is.
It truly is. I'm only
Yes.
34, so technically it's okay.
No, it's older than you
But
are.
with the transition and then me kind of getting my elective, which is this community class, I opted to take on the project in that space. And so that's kind of one of the main focuses of that class, especially the first semester at the high school. So this is my group. And all of these kids are former PACE students, whereas next year it'll be a different round of, hopefully from sophomore to senior.
Okay, but PACE is phased out, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
But I wanted to make sure that kind of moving into this community class, because the class itself is focused around, I think, trying to provide the same kind of family environment, the same kind of like working environment
Right.
that whole program had. Fingers crossed. So yeah, and so I mean, I think in that regard, I wanted to keep this going because I appreciated this project and kind of like the spirit of it.
Well, and thank you, because it has become a tradition. And I think there is something about helping others, we also help ourselves and realize. Oh, it's you? Oh, yes, this is what you get from former parents. No, but going back, I just think it's important. I commend you for doing this.
Well, I can't do without it.
Well, you can't do it without the kids, that's for sure. So, gentlemen, let your classmates know that we appreciate the fact that you guys are carrying this tradition on.
Are you guys seniors, juniors? Seniors. Are you guys thinking about college next year?
Yes.
How many packs did you deliver to the transition center?
110, which I was really surprised because I am low. When we did this as the program, we could have up to 60 kids
Yeah.
putting this together. And we
Yeah.
only had, well, about 11.
Wow.
So with 11 kids, we were able to do that. And then through clothing donations, specifically from one amazing former secretary donor, if you guys know Nancy Coleman.
Oh, yes.
She puts in work. And other people who donated close to, we did about 780 pounds
Wow.
of clothing
Wow.
for the
Wow. That's awesome.
Port West Commission.
Is there anything that you tried new this year that would work well for next year too, or any improvements you'd make for next year? Just thinking about something that worked really well. And even,
Well, I would say, separate from, I was really lucky this year with the GoFundMe to get funds for next year. We always, all the time, accept any sort of like small hygiene products that are on that list. And I think I gave a flyer to the district office, and I've put it around before. So like the travel size things are perfect for that. But sometimes I just don't get the numbers for specific things, like maybe shaving cream's low. And so a lot of the monetary donations that I've got that are used for the class, but also used for the homeless project itself, I've used to buy like missing items and that can buy things in bulk, so I'm sure,
Sure.
keep it closet. And just, I think, just keeping the information out there, just knowing that, we are always putting that together to do that project every year.
sure.
Thank you for donating your time and your energy to our community. It's awesome, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, commend you on your work. I wanted to know a little bit more about, you mentioned calling for donations. Are you partnering with organizations to get your donations or money? What is your target? Who are you partnering with?
I will say, this is my VIP for calling this year. It was pretty much one of the only people who did the mask with calling. And I would say one of the things that you found was, I think, for how many people you called, it wasn't super effective. Like, you ran into a lot of roadblocks. Would you say that's pretty fair?
Yeah.
Of just, we'll call you back, So, we have some that we called from an old list, because before it was me, it was Carol Hansen for a year, when we were doing PACE last year, and then before that, it was Evan McFadden for forever. And so, I know he had a pretty solid calling list. We tried to jump into that, I think, this year, but again, having lower numbers, I think canvassing for that many calls might be a little hard. And I also think, just in this day and age, I think like email and the digital option is probably a better outreach. But yeah, we would love to have specific partners if they were willing to do such a thing. We have one specific dentist office that seems to be pretty solid in toothpaste.
Okay.
So,
That's
so
great.
that's good. But yeah, I would like to build those networks. I don't necessarily have like a footing in how to do that.
Yeah.
That's just kind of like a miss and trying to make it happen. So.
Well, commend you guys for your work. It's important. We have a lot of homeless families and people in our community, and they need all that support. So we appreciate your effort.
Thank you guys.
Throughout the year, if you put messages on Facebook through Andrea,
Yeah, that's true.
it will help your line people to get some stuff down to high school.
Okay, that sounds. I can do that for sure. And I made that flyer, so that can be something that kind of goes out every once in a while. Fun.
See, you did take 10 minutes.
Yes, I did.
Congratulations.
Nice job.
and
Thank you,
Thank you,
gentlemen.
gentlemen.
office presented, you guys have also done donations.
Yeah.
So that's.
Fabulous. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And I know that you need to go home and study, so feel free to get the books when you get them. The Olympics is over, guys. Mr. Goodlow, students, middle college presentation.
So, where we got what's there? We didn't rehearse anything, so.
Oh, okay.
You'll be fine.
Yeah, it was good. So good evening, Mr. Goodlow, Vice Principal at Parkrose High School. And I have three of my wonderful students that went through the first round of middle college. So we had 5 students that started the program. Currently, we have 4 continuing with the program, but give them a chance to introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Lily Embis. I'm a senior at Parkrose High School and second year at Mount Hood right now.
Yeah, my name is Tatiana Turner, and I'm a senior and also a second year student at Mount Hood.
I'm Aaron Soto, and I'm also a senior at Parkrose, and also a second year student at Mount Hood.
So just to give you a little bit of background on how the program started and got introduced to Parkrose, it actually came about through Karen's student advisory committee. Aaron was actually on the committee and heard about the program and different opportunities that other districts were having by having middle college at Reynolds, students at David Douglas, and Gresham Barlow having access to the middle college program. So through the student advisory committee, he got a chance to get Karen's ear and was pumping the program to her. And then in return, she put the pressure on me to make sure that the partnership was successful and that we brought it to Parkrose. So without Aaron, the process would never got off the ground. So most of this is doing. But in spring 2016, we started talking to Mount Hood about forming a partnership and seeing what we need to do to get the middle college program rolling at PHS. So fortunately, they gave us a grant the first year and paid for us to have 5 students go through the program. So we had to go through the process of identifying students that could fit the program and kind of get themselves out to Mount Hood, be able to take the classes, and also finish their high school diploma at the same time. So obviously Aaron was an obvious choice for getting the program started. So really used him to kind of recruit kids to join the program. And we wanted to find a cohort of juniors that were tight-knit, that could go out to Mount Hood and do classes together and manage and be their own support system, because going to Mount Hood, they didn't have access to any of the teachers, any of the admin staff. They was basically becoming freshmen college students at the age of 16 and 17 and trying to navigate the system on their own with help of the advisory folks at Mount Hood Community College. And then we also looked at supporting our students that were our tag students and took all our AP classes. We're kind of not being challenged at the high school and using this to promote them to expand their thinking, expand their learning, getting access to a college campus early. So we picked some of our tag students to go out there as well. So the first year, everything was paid for by Mount Hood. Each student a year is about $5,000. And this year, the high school, just based off their success, and we didn't want to leave them hanging and bring them back to the high school for their senior year, we put forth a bill to have them continue with the program this year. And as we get later in the program, some of the success at what they're doing, and I have them share some of their personal experience, is off the chart. Like we got feedback from the people at Mount Hood and saying our kids are outperforming other kids that are at Reynolds, at Centennial, Gresham Barlow, and David Douglas. So.
Andrea,
Yes.
make sure that's in the notes.
So yeah, so funding was an issue, but me and Molly met this spring, and we are going to continue the program next year to have another round of 5 students go through as these students phase out. And we put the word out. We're actually looking for juniors and seniors, so getting access to those students who might only want to do it for 1 year, and those students might only want the 2-year program. We feel like with these kids, it was best to do a 2-year program so they get the full scope and we can actually learn from the cohort going through it. So some of the benefits was for the students was money saved. So 2 years of college is free for them, taking advantage of it. But at the same time, they're earning college credit. The college credit is being applied to their high school diploma. So as they're taking Writing 121 out there at Mount Hood, they're actually getting high school English credit as well. So it's kind of like a dual credit program. Time saved, so when they leave with their high school diploma, a lot of them are going to be a lot closer to AA than our seniors starting. And so most of them will go into school as sophomores or potentially juniors. And the credits achieved is amazing. That's on the next slide. And then just their personal experience, just being out there around students. I know Aaron came to visit me today and was just talking about how, you know, he feels like he's just above high school and disconnected from the building, but in a good way, to the sense that it's more mature. But they also had an opportunity, even though they're out Mount Hood, they still able to play sports through the high school and participate in extracurricular activities. So Tatiana played for volleyball. Billy did some activities in a band as well. So, and then we also looked at alternative options too, just being a small high school, not being able to serve students with our elective programs, trying to find alternative ways to find students into automotive program, graphic design program that might be interested in, and this is one of those ways. But this is the slide that I'm most proud about. So you can see some of their accomplishments. So school year 2016-17, so when they were juniors, we had 5 participants, so they earned a total of 172 credits through the full year between the 5 of them.
That's a lot of credit.
Yes. And then this year, so at the end of the fall term, they had a total of 232 credits and 60 from the fall term, and then currently they're enrolled in 65 credits. I think they just had midterm, right? Yeah, so they're at the midpoint of the winter term. And then down at the bottom is kind of a student breakdown of credits. So individually they earn 46, 55, 59, and 2 students are at 61 credits earned with another term to go. So they're getting close to reaching that point of an AA degree of the 90 credits. And then this is the money saved. So each student has saved roughly about over $70,000 towards their higher education to date, and the grand total for all 5 students is over $30K. So opportunity for our students to get on the faster track, save money for their families, and then benefit them when they go into college, and hopefully when they go on to get their master's, they can have that success. And I just want to allow them opportunity. I've been talking, but allow them the opportunity to talk about their experience at Mount Hood and what it's done for them, and just share some of their personal success.
Okay, well, I'm personally really grateful to Aaron and Mr. Goodlow and all of the advisors at Mount Hood for being able to start up this program for us when we were sophomores in high school, so we could get into it as juniors and be able to keep it as seniors, because towards the end of our junior year, we weren't so sure if we would be able to continue the program or not, because we knew that the grants for the funding wouldn't be provided anymore. I believe this program has really helped me develop not only as a scholar, but also just as a person in general. I'm able to keep a part-time job with the flexible hours that I'm able to choose my classes. I already had some credits from Mount Hood from College Now classes that I took my sophomore year. So this spring, I'll be leaving Parkrose High School with a diploma and Mount Hood Community College with my Associates of Arts Oregon transfer, meaning that if I choose to go to my in-state school, PSU, I could be going there for 2 years free and just finish up my bachelor's, and then from my part-time job at Target, I've already begun saving up for my master's degree.
Wow. Nice work. Okay.
I just want to say, for the most part, I'm very grateful for this program because, you know, like me and like 3 other students in the program, we were able to push ourselves academically and grow, you know, individually and grow our character. And I think bringing this program back for, you know, future students, you know, like such as ourselves, you know, they could find that motivation to, branch out and do something different other than the high school experience. And although, the high school experience is great, but I found that, going to college early really prepared me, and it's just been very beneficial for me. And for other students who want to do it, they could also find success as well. Because if you really want to do something, you just gotta put the effort and the time to do it.
This year you will graduate from the high school,
Yep.
and you will also have an associate's degree from Mount.
Well, I'm still working on mine, so I'm still going to
Okay.
continue it,
Okay,
but it'll be a short time.
okay. And then, do you have a plan?
Yeah, I plan to go to college,
Okay,
for sure. Yeah.
but you'll be transferring the
Yeah,
junior?
I'll be transferring with the associates. So once I transfer, I'll be taking classes as a junior. So
Mhm.
instead of starting at the bottom with freshman classes,
Right.
I'll be doing it with the time I've already spent doing it.
Right, so then you're looking at 2 years
Yeah,
compared to 4.
yeah.
And you're looking at a school in Oregon?
Yeah, for sure, yeah.
I really found this program really beneficial because for me, the high school wasn't like very as challenging. And I know for like both of these little college students, they're just were at a high level to where it wasn't challenging, even the like environment. And so being at Mount Hood, it was just a better place for us to be, and we're like really independent, and we can just work. And it was just really helpful with having like a job that I can, have my studies done and then be done with that and just. And what was I? That was it.
And we also have a parent too that, I don't know if you want to share, Gina, if you want to say anything about.
Do I have to go up there?
No, you can say anything.
Well, actually, wait, yeah, because I'll tell you why.
Okay, come up
You
there.
need to go up there.
And I'm sorry, I didn't prepare her.
I know,
I
it's
just-
great, it's okay.
Yes.
Yes, and as a parent.
So for me, Tatiana's my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really excited about this program because when Tatiana was in 8th grade, we lost a parent and a step-parent income. And so for us, we had gone through a lot of kind of turmoil. And she was super smart, she was in tag, but kind of leading off the track. And I reached out to the counselor her freshman year. I knew that she needed to kind of have a speedway to college. And there wasn't any avenues, and I did all this research, and I was trying to find different things. And then I've been talking with Mr. Goodlove, so when he brought this up, I was like, this is such a perfect opportunity. And for Tatiana, her first 2 years in high school, straight A's.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, it was just too easy for her. So having this opportunity to go to college, not experience all the mundane stuff of high school, was really helpful for her. She works, 30 hours a week. She pays for all her extra classes because they pay for 12 credits, but she pays for the extra. So she'll be graduating with her AA this year as well. So I'm just really proud of her, and I feel like if she didn't have this opportunity, I feel like she would have kind of got off track and probably not have been so successful in high school. So she needed that challenge, and I really appreciate the program. I think another benefit of the program is that they have people at Mount Hood that kind of advocate for them and work with them. And I feel like a lot of students that graduate from high school don't necessarily have that. They're told to go to college, and then they don't know what to do. They don't know what to do when they want to drop a class, or when it's not going to where can they get their resources. So these individuals had an advocate there that could say, hey, maybe you should drop this class, or maybe you should, do this. So that was very beneficial for them as well. So I'm really excited about the program. I really hope you guys choose to continue it, because there's a lot of high schools out there that are already doing this and surpassing us. And so we kind of need to keep up with what everybody else is doing.
Very much.
Any questions?
Thank
I just have a comment.
Question.
I went to Mount Hood College for back in maybe 2003, and I graduated from David Douglas, which is just south of us. And I remember not having a clear idea where to go, but I remember I went to Mount Hood Community College, I was able to get my 90 credits, and then I went transferred to Portland State. Now that I am a teacher, and I've been working for about 12 years, there are still colleagues of mine who still owe about $60,000, $70,000 for their college education when I'm almost finished. And I really thank Mount Hood Community College because of the same reason that you said, that they connect you with the resources that are in the community, and then they can guide you in a way that saves you money, saves you time. So congratulations to all of you, and please keep up your successes. And thanks, Mom, for being here and supporting you. We would love to, all the parents to support their students just as much as you do. Thank you so much.
Yeah, this sounds like a great program option for students that can be self-directed and autonomous, and it sounds like it gave you the freedom to make some choices for yourselves, which I think is a big thing for any student, right, is being able to make, but also it sounds like it was important to be able to connect back with the high school for those extracurricular activities, right, so take what you wanted from the high school experience, but challenge yourself and have some self-directed learning at Mount Hood. So congratulations and great work, and thank you for coming and telling us about the program.
Yeah, I think the one thing that we do here that's really well is we support our students that have a tendency to struggle and need additional supports. One thing that I think has been missing is supporting those smart kids in the classroom that are not getting challenged. I too have 2 middle schoolers who are TAG students, so I see this as part of their future too. I just want to say congratulations to all 3 of you. What you're doing is tremendous. You've taken off a lot of burden from your parents, securing your college funding, and then the sky's the limit for you guys. So you're able to graduate with an associate's, a high school diploma, and move on forward. I'm curious of what each one of you is looking at for your bachelor's degree. You didn't mention that. Do you have an idea? You guys have an idea what
I
that
don't
would be?
actually know,
Okay.
which is,
That's okay.
that's why it's kind of hard, because like with finishing college so early, I don't
Sure.
get those extra 2 years to
Right.
think about what I want to do, but I know I'll figure it out.
Sky's the limit for me, so. But if you have an idea, I'd love to know. Do you have an idea?
I'm looking at becoming an educator, not necessarily a teacher per se, but I really want to work to inspire young adults or youth to discovering who they are and becoming people and members of society. So I'm really interested in sociology and philosophy and just human behavioral patterns and how they work and why they do.
School psychologist.
Yeah, I plan to keep going to school and either pursue occupational therapy or physical therapy, because I find that helping people, improve their life and make them better, just complements what I do and it makes me feel better as a person.
It's great that the district and Mount Hood Community College and of course yourselves with determination were able to put this together. You're just a step ahead. And I'm hoping that your success will translate in better numbers down the road for this program. It's great.
Thanks for all the hard work. And thanks to Mr. Goodlow, because Mr.
Yes.
Goodlow's been a great advocate for this program.
Andre, thank you.
Oh, no problem. Thank you.
And thanks for bringing the kids with you.
Thank you.
And I know that you guys have homework, so I totally understand the need for you to.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have presentation recognition. We will not vote on it right now, but during the week of March 5 through 9 is Classified Employee Appreciation Week. Sonia, will you read to us what the resolution says?
Yes. Classified Employee Appreciation Week resolution. Whereas the education of youth is an essential to the future of our community, state, country, and world, and whereas classified employees are the backbone of our public education system, and whereas classified employees work directly with students, educators, parents, volunteers, business partners, and community members, and whereas classified employees support the smooth operation of offices, the safety and maintenance of buildings and property, and safe transportation, healthy nutrition, and direct instruction of students, and whereas our community depends upon and trusts classified employees to serve students, and whereas classified employees with their diverse talents and true dedication nurture students throughout their school years. Now therefore be it resolved that the Parkrose Board of Directors proclaims March 5th through 9th, 2018 to be Classified Employee Appreciation Week. And be it further resolved that the Parkrose Board of Directors strongly encourages all members of our community to join in this observance, recognizing the dedication and hard work of these individuals.
Thank you. And we will be voting on that later. Consent calendar. These are items that you all know that we have information. Usually they don't need a lot of discussion. Do I hear a motion to accept or reject the consent calendar as modified?
I move that we accept the consent calendar as modified.
Do I hear a second?
I second.
I hear a first, I hear a motion and a second. Any discussion? Let's vote. All in favor of accepting the consent calendar as modified, signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. At this point in the agenda, we have non-agenda items, citizen comments. Any cards?
No.
Well, we will move on to Board of Education. And if you will note, Board, we have been doing, usually the board stuff is at the end of the meeting. And in discussion, when we were going through this, we decided why not put it at the front? So we have moved up the board. First one would be appreciative inquiry update. And I would love to have you give that.
So our third community solutions meeting, which is the community solutions group, is the first goal coming out of the appreciative inquiry work last year. Our third meeting will be tomorrow. Each of the meetings this year, we've been growing our membership of the group to be more representative of our community. We're going to be tomorrow getting a presentation from the University of Portland, our research partner in this work. They have done some research around inclusive community outreach or community engagement for school districts like ours with diverse population, lower income, smaller districts. So we should get some good information from that. Yeah. And so we're gonna work on generating ideas on how to engage our community more and do it better and make Parkrose community engagement stronger. And as always, developing our membership to be as representative as possible.
Are there any support or components that already built on what we have, like, for example, African American Saturday night? Do they mention anything about having those meetings on a continuous basis, or?
The University of Portland?
Yeah.
I don't know yet. I'll hopefully find out tomorrow.
And you'll know in April. Okay, question? Committee reports. Equity and School Improvement Committee. That's Eric and Sonia.
Yes. I don't think we have an update because we had to cancel the screening of the film. But we had talked about our last meeting, the last meeting. So once we get that rescheduled, I don't believe we have an update at this time. Unless Eric.
No, I think most of the conversation was about the movie for last week, and so we'll see what happens.
Do we know anything?
Well, our fellow from New York came and left. And we spent a lot of time talking together on the phone and explaining how Portland makes weather decisions, and he was as understanding as he could be. He lived in Nashville at one time, so he said that Nashville is like Portland when it comes to snow. So
It is very similar.
he was understanding, and now our team just needs to get together and talk about reschedule. Nike supported the screening of the film, so it's just kind of different parties and getting a hold of folks. Lenny, who's the fellow from the film company that I was talking with last week, has offered a lot of different options of things that we can do versus having him to have to fly back out. Which could be like a video conference call for the Q&A piece and talk a little bit about the making of the film and the kids that are involved in the movie. So we're working on that with
And Michael, what about the movie, the presentation, can we like just say May and then just present it at a time? Or?
Yeah, the plan is that we will reschedule, and we'll do it during a district-directed professional development time. So now it's just sitting down with all of the schools and reconfiguring a schedule that's already pretty tight, but obviously we're committed to showing the film, and we'll likely look at probably the month of April, because the upcoming district-directed days are pretty well set. Some folks have people coming to present and so forth, so we'll probably look to April. And then we really would like to do this for our classified staff in the fall as folks are coming back to school. So we have a plan in place, and Nike's gonna still support the project, so that's great.
I appreciate Nike. And I concurred with the direction that we took on that Wednesday. But it was so hard,
Yeah.
knowing that the gentleman was coming and the film was there, and we were not going to see it,
Yeah.
because it is such a powerful film. So it
We'll
was.
get it done. We'll get it done. Just a little delay.
I trust that. Legislative update from anybody?
No, actually, I was able to get into the system, but not the way that we're supposed to, so I sent an update, and so actually everybody saw it,
Yes.
and just information that I done over the past, especially the one, that the race, down in Senate 4024 is between those three people, and, we're kind of waiting and see what's going on.
And there's also, I got some information from Michael Demereau, and then I got Defend Oregon update today. The Senate has passed with the new federal tax plan. It left Oregon short of $250 million short of funds. That would be equivalent to 1,500 teachers. So the Senate has taken a stance on adapting us to the federal tax plan now. However, it's in the House, and they're not sure what they're gonna do. So they need us to call and support Senate Bill 5228. That's to the Oregon House, and asking them to prioritize Oregon's most vulnerable over not doing that. So, and since this is the short session, tomorrow would be a great day to call or email. So it's in the House now that we're concerned about, because the Senate did pass it.
To add to Eric's, the bill 4113 did pass the House.
Yes,
Has a Senate hearing tomorrow.
right,
Oh, great.
yeah.
Thank you for
Public hearing.
Yep, public hearings tomorrow. Okay,
And well, you and I went to the town hall for Denbrough, Smith Warner, and Kenny Geyer, talked about school funding issues. And I emailed all those folks to follow up on those points and talk about our Parkrose students and our need for stable and adequate school funding and matching, should they be matching on any other side accounts.
actually, it's one of the best letters I've ever seen. So maybe in March, we could have her letter under correspondence, because it was well written.
What was it about? Is it the funding of the schools? School funding?
It's about a lot of things, yes, but it was about school funding primarily.
I got an email back from, so when I went to the educators town hall, back in the high school, so part of the conversation situated around the 50-50 of this year. And so Luke Frederick was there and Barbara Smith Warner. And so the reason why they did it is because 50-50 split, it's just so you know. Is back when they did the budget, there was a sense of passing some sort of 97 light.
Right,
And then it didn't pass, but.
like 4 weeks later.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the 50-50 was done with the expectation that the business community would eventually sit on the table.
Mhm.
But then, as we all know, and as it sometimes happens, the invest table and nothing happens. And this is where we are. But you know, once again, I mean, the people that we talk to all the time, they know our pain, they know where we are, they hear it from not just us, from all of us. But let's start reaching out to people out of our circle and say, hey, you know what, we need to prioritize funding for the schools. I mean, the Dembros, Barbara Smiths of the world, Hernandez's, all of them, they live here, they know that they send their kids to schools.
I would kind of push back on that, because at that town hall, Barbara Smith Warner thought that the biggest education issue was something related to the levies, the education levies that PPS has passed, sort of outperforming and almost doing too well. And that was creating maybe a compression issue.
Right.
That was the education issue that she led with. And then when we brought up the 50-50 split, she just said, well, why didn't you guys budget for that? How come that was a problem? Shouldn't you guys have just been able to budget for that? So, I mean, I think that in theory she agrees, but I think there's a lot of detailed nuance where, you know, when you're talking about the implementation or sure, maybe in theory the 50-50 split with this additional revenue could have been totally fine, but it played out a different way, right? And it wasn't our lack of budgeting. That's not, is what's driving our gap.
It comes from from many different areas. I mean, part of it has to do with that we have been in cutting mode for the past 20 years. And it comes down to measure 5. I mean, that's the beginning. That's where we're still struggling. Our legislators, when I was attending the Parkrose Educators Council, they agreed with that. They say the teachers were there, David Douglas, Parkrose, Centennial, Reynolds, and they were saying, you know, we need more funding for the schools, and no one disagrees with that.
Yeah.
Now the problem is how do we make that possible? And that's how the conversation kind of goes into different tribes, and some people support this and some people support that. And so it's kind of like we have to make sure that we reach out to others, not just the same group, so that others, they kind of say, oh, you know, we talked to the Parkrose board members, or we talked to the people in this county, and it's not just where they live, but they have issues. School River, they also have issues. Salem has also has issues. So it's branching out, reaching out beyond our, 2 districts that we share.
That is true. However,
She's our representative.
Yes.
Eric,
She represents our
I
community.
was, when we were down at the Hollywood Senior Citizens, I was totally shocked when she turned to me and said, why didn't you do a better job with budgeting? And I looked at her and said, we did, but you took out any ability to deal with inflation and to deal with health costs. And,
She was at our roundtable here.
right,
And she did seem pretty surprised at the uniqueness of our problem. It wasn't, I mean, she kind of had this broad view of what our budgeting problem was. Whenever Sarah was
Yes.
very distinct and told her exactly, it seemed like the light went off and she understood. But she's our representative, so she represents us. It's important that she knows the importance of what's going on in our district, what we're struggling with. It's not a budgetary issue. We have a shortfall that needs to be addressed. So as our representative, she needs to know that, because she's sitting in that session tomorrow, and she's speaking for us.
And she,
So that's
yeah,
what's
that's
important.
And we're her only
She's a-
non-PPS
Yeah.
little bit.
Yeah, she needs to know what the.
well, and she's going to, the thought is, she chaired the committee on roads, on transportation, that has come up with several proposals. The thought is that she's gonna be chairing a committee on education, defining what, school districts need to do education well. So she'll be traveling throughout the state, and talking to people, she and this committee. And we suggested that she includes some students, since they're the ones who are receiving it. and they probably could give her some heads up. And I did offer to travel with her. She didn't grab a hold of that offer, however. Yeah, so I've got to say that this board, and Eric, thank you for going to that meeting that night, because both Karen and I had conflicts as well. I appreciate you.
Absolutely, I mean, we all have different meetings, some of them I will attend, some of you will attend, some of you, Sonia will attend, and that's, you know, that's how it should be. I mean, the good thing is that 5 of us can go to different places and raise awareness to what issue. I mean, some of the things that we say here, a lot of people don't know, and we need to take this information to the community again. We get, you know, we get knowledge and we are here listening to the presentations, but at the same time, you know, there are our neighbors, they may not have this information available, and I mean, and even if you have a conversation with them, and you know, if you're mowing the lawn or just planting some flowers, you know, just, hey, by the way, did you know that this is happening in the organization? So kind of raise awareness, and because we need more people. I mean, we need more people to get involved in this.
Well, and which brings us to, I'll speak to it later, but on the 28th, Wednesday, Karen will be doing from 6 to 7 here, how our education is funded. And I will be here with her. I know that we've sent out some Facebook postings, and I know it's gone on some of the stuff that the kids are taking home. So it has been shared. And that came about from our meeting with the Shaver PTO. Because the question came up, how does this done? And same thing with SAC PTO and when I was at the middle school. So we have been promoting it for Wednesday night.
For Prescott has an academic night from 4:30 to
Yes.
6:30. The Prescott people might be there.
EST, oh, I'm sorry, Sonia. Oregon School Board Members of Color Caucus update.
Yeah, I wish I had an update. I have not heard, they've kind of fallen off the calendar. There was supposed to be a meeting scheduled, and I haven't had any information. I know that Jessica Arzante, who's a director with MESD, reported to the general OSBA board meeting earlier in January, and went as a representative of the Color Caucus and talked about what we had drafted, our goals, our objectives, the leadership, but there hasn't been some date set for a meeting. So I'm just waiting to hear from Jessica when we're gonna have our next meeting. So hopefully I have something for next time.
Okay,
next month.
so I hope so too. MESD Budget Committee, Dave.
Yes, I will have access to the budget April 6th down in San Antonio.
Yeah.
And then the budget meeting, committee meeting, the first one will be April 10th. So we'll discuss.
Okay, I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. January data report, we had follow-up information. It was in our board packet. MESD equity work and next step. Sarah, Karen, and I went to the first one. It was from 9 to 4 at the ESD. And they planned additional ones. We've got a March 21st, a May 5th, a June 18th, and an August 29th. These are on Saturdays.
Not all of them.
Not
Some of
all
them
of
are
them.
weeknight evenings.
Okay, 47s are.
Some are weeknight evenings, and I think one or two's a Saturday. One's a Saturday.
No, one's a Saturday, all the rest are evenings. Okay.
It was a really excellent training at the ESD. Karen was the only superintendent that attended, and then there was like 1 to 3 board members from ESD, Centennial, Gresham Barlow, us, and David Douglas. And I thought the trainer was really great. I mean, she knew her material really well, but she also understood the unique role of a school board and how we could have influence on equity. So it was just a really great group of folks talking and being open and authentic with a lot of trust. And I hope that as many of us as possible can go to these future dates, because I think it's a really important topic, and we only really get to talk as a group in these meetings or when we go to trainings.
You know, and I enjoyed the feedback from Centennial's board members. Had a great discussion with the representatives from David Douglas. So I would hope that there's a way that we can free up our calendars so at least more than 2 of us can go to some of these.
Are these continuing, like, or it's just a discussion at each one of the different topics?
No,
It's not like a closed cohort, no.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
So, and it's all about equity works and what the next steps are.
Sounds good.
And it will be a different presenter each time.
But again, I think focused on that school board member role.
Oh, got it. Okay, I'll look at them.
Which is difficult in itself. I will put in here, I will, and this will call this legislative as well. The Sanctuary City work group is done. They're sending a proposal to the city commissioners March 1st. And basically, they're asking for what LA and Seattle has, and that is a Office of Immigration and Refugees, and then putting together some pro bono help when people are picked up. So I hope to attend the meeting on the 1st, if they would get the information out to us. We had a training at the last work session. So give you all a second, and I'm just gonna start with Sonia and work down the table for one aha each, or ha.
Well, I appreciate the presentation. I think it's always good, even for folks who've been on the board for a couple of years, to get the information that, you know, this is the structure, this is how you operate as a board. Sometimes I think you can probably get caught up in what you're doing and not realize that, oh, we do have to work as a unit, we do vote as a unit. For me, as a new person, it was just, I kind of just certified what I had learned through my training in summer, during the summer conference. I really was diligent in looking at the workshops I went to learn about my role, because I feel it's really important that I have a really good frame on what I'm doing coming into this. It's not about my ego, it's about, you know, working together as a board, our mission, you know, what our purpose here, what it is to help our school and help our kids. So for a lot of it, she just confirmed a lot of what I had just researched and read and understood my role to be. So that's what I took away from it. I appreciated it.
Child of the 80s, I was aha, so it's like take on me. I was kind of confused. I wrote down clarifying and verifying board members' speech protections as individuals. I found it important to have a dialogue and look to further discussion about OSBA's version number 2 of the BFF policy. Our last version was passed in 2010, and their newest version is from 2015, and it does have a little more to it. It is a little more modern than 2010. So I try to put that out there for maybe August of the retreat.
Okay, thank you. Sarah?
Yes, to what these guys have said, and I learned a little bit more about the parliamentary procedure. I appreciate you implementing. I can see some of the things that you're implementing as a result of that. So yes to everything Sonia was saying too. It's a unique role.
This is a unique role. Eric?
The same as Sonia and Dave say. I mean, I was surprised that Reynolds didn't have. I think I asked them, so what about your board agreement? They said we didn't have any. So in some ways we were sort of ahead, and some ways we kind of not. So but the same information. I mean, it's always great to learn from people, and I wouldn't mind having them again and go to a training again. It's just you relearn the things that you forgot, and sometimes and then you just have a very perspective on things. So I'm very thankful that we have the opportunity, and I would look forward to seeing them again, if possible, whenever they can. But the same as Sonia and Dave and Sarah, it was great time.
Good. And I think that Renee will be available for later on in the year. So I hear what you guys are saying. And I just appreciate it. I learned some stuff that night and walked around with my little chart, which I meant to pull out. But I was walking around with this all day Tuesday and Wednesday. Okay, we're gonna have, out of order, got it. So, no, it was great. Moving into district business, we don't have a lot of stuff. So at this point in time, we've been meeting for a solid, fantastic hour, but we're gonna take a 10-minute break. Well, it'll be 8, but we have a reason to celebrate. And as I'm a big believer of celebrating important moments in history.
Oh,
no.
You have to share here.
All right, where's the fork?
We say there's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. We could all circle around. So I think it's appropriate, since this is an important moment in history, that all the administrators get off of their computers for a second. And we all sing a rounding happy birthday to someone. And I have the lowest voice, if you want to start me off. Okay. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Sonia. Happy birthday to you. And many more. And this is also a really nice evening because we have one of our favorite people attending and sitting in his special chair. It's good to see you, Mr. McKay. So, you guys now have 7 minutes to get some cake, utilize the restroom, and refill your glasses. Was unavailable this evening, so Assistant Superintendent Michael will take on the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items.
Great, thank you. We talked a little bit about the equity team. I would just speak to, we have a meeting next week. The goal, particularly in the next couple of months, is to really look at distilling some of the key ideas that came from the School Improvement Committee and looking at how race influences teaching and learning. So it gets down to, I think the middle college presentation was a good example of access. You know, what are we doing as a system to provide access for all students? And are we looking at our policies and our systems and our structures within our schools to see what that access looks like? So albeit it's a great program, but it's 5 kids, right? And this is looking at things beyond just the financial implications, just like how are we structuring school and what are the opportunities that we're providing. So the goal in the conversation about race and its influence around teaching and learning really comes down to what are the practices that impede opportunity and impede some of the achievement gap that we currently see in our system. So that's the big picture goal, and we meet next week, and I was really thrilled with how our last meeting went, so I'm looking forward to our next meeting.
Michael, this is the grid that you're working off of?
Yeah, this is the agenda. So I just have a couple of key points there around the why. And we actually spent a lot of time, I think obviously to do this work, it takes time to build trust, and we did spend some time really just kind of sharing why we were all part of the group. And that was really valuable. I really appreciated getting to hear from everybody on the team. We talked a little bit about the film, and then I provided everyone with an article called 10 Things Every White Teacher Should Know When Talking About Race. And that's an article that we're going to jigsaw and come back to and do a Socratic seminar on next Wednesday. great podcast that I recommended that actually Katie Barrett, I've given you lots of kudos because it was a great recommendation, so thank you, Katie. ESSA update, I think right now, you may or may not be surprised, but things federally are moving pretty slow. We don't have a lot of news to report, mainly because the legislature has not determined funding for, there isn't a funding package for education, so Sheree and I were just talking specifically today about title revenue. She's just doing the best she can from her knowledge to budget accordingly, and then ideally we find out about allocations because ESSA did include the Title IV, I think that I've described to you earlier, which is just a small allocation this year of $21,000. So we're anticipating some news, but we just don't know when, and we don't have any news from our State Department about when more information is going to come our way. So,
And there's none on the federal website. I'm on it
Yep.
now.
we're just planning accordingly as best we can. The open enrollment and interdistrict transfer counts, so these are standard numbers that you'll be voting on a little later this evening. The open enrollment is the 110 spots, K-12, any grade, any Oregon school, which is a standard number. And then within the district itself, inter-district transfers, we've allowed for 20 spots and focused on juniors and seniors only. Anybody have any questions about that? Okay. And MESD menu, local service plan, again, this is a fairly comprehensive plan, and obviously our district chooses from the menu and selects the services that we will need and subscribe to in the following year. And this is kind of our updated menu and what we'll be choosing from, which will be part of your package to have a chance to look over. Any questions about the MESD menu?
I have a question about that, because I know we have the funding for outdoor school,
Mm-hmm.
and there's money that's out, every school is allocated something in that. Is that included, or is that in addition to?
MESD, you want to speak to that, Sheree? Come on up.
The Measure $98 are in the plan to spend, but the dollars are not in there as a revenue source. That comes from the state as a biennium allocation. So what's happening now is we've gotten the allocation for the first year, asking for the 6 days, 5 nights, right? That's the first year. And a lot of schools haven't really chimed in that they want to do this because they stopped doing outdoor school. Next year might be a little bit different, so we're still holding out, but that's probably going to be a reduction. But what you will see in the plan, there'll be a tab for it, and then we have our own little tab, and I could go through that if you wanted, but it shows you that we're at about 260 kids that will be going, right? Now, we're still chiming for this 6 days, 5 nights for next year. That may not weigh out, and they've already advised us of that, because there's only so many funds. Now that everybody knows all you have to do is apply, they've already warned us that we may not get as much money as we got this year, because we were funded plus for our kids this year. So we don't have to go out and get donations or anything this year. 18, 19 may not be the same answer.
Or we might get funded for like 3 days, 2 nights, as opposed to 6 days, 5 nights, or
That's correct.
4
So
3 years.
it's up there, but there's a funding model in there. But what it doesn't show in there is the credits that we get from Metro and East County Soil and Conservation. They're not all in there yet either. So
There's also was money in there for transportation, right? Incorrect, or was I looking at?
there is money in Measure 99 for transportation and for our cost of staff that we send as our staff, not just the university staff, but our staff. So that money is part of the allocation, okay? But it's not in the MESD. The cost is in here, but our revenue is not in that plan, because it's totally different.
Any other questions?
It's always good to read about all the programs that go on at the ESD.
And they do ask us each year at different director levels if there are certain services, things that they're thinking about doing, particularly when it comes to teaching and learning support on my end of things. And we don't necessarily have to. So for instance, there's there is a county-wide coach for mathematics, and actually we really take advantage of that person in that we are smaller, but we really use their time and get a lot of value out of that position. But sometimes they'll bring up other positions like a science TOSA support, and it's just kind of weighing like how much use and economy are we getting out of those positions, because they're oftentimes spread pretty thin, but it's nice to be part
The
of that
first
process.
meeting of that is next week with the business managers. I've already honed out already scripted out highlighted items to Michelle. It's tab. So
Okay.
I've done a cost analysis on it. There's a few things, but we're looking good, and we compare it. The business officials actually look it over first, and then we give it to each one of the directors for them to say whether or not they want to do it, or is there something flagged out there that obviously we haven't done before. So.
Great.
The next piece is related to my school improvement report, which is really following up on data that we didn't report on. I reported a little bit on reading last month, and specifically was around the third grade performance, and I talked about the growth. And tonight I'm going to report specifically on two different test measures. One is the SAT report, and the other is the third grade DIBELS data. So the SAT report is not directly related to board goals, but obviously something that we want to share with you. You've got it on there, so you can just put it up, and I don't need to put it on there. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to actually walk up here and just do a quick explanation as to what this is all about. So what this is this is a standard report from the College Board, and it gives us a mean total score for the entire group of kids that took the SAT, as well as individualized down to the reading and writing portion and the mathematics portion. And the reading and writing portion combines some science and social studies content within the PSAT and the SAT test. So the very first one that you see there is actually the repeat test of kids who actually go back and take it a second time after taking it at SAT School Day right here. So one of the advantages of kids being able to take this test each year is it really is practice, because there is lots of evidence to show when kids are able to see, this is what I got as an 8th grader, and here's what I can do to get to a more target score in 9th grade. That practice makes a difference. So you can just see, even though here you have 188 kids that took the actual SAT, seniors this year. And then kids that went back and took the test again, you can see the mean score goes up.
Yeah.
And obviously those are kids who are trying to achieve a higher score to submit with a college application, and that is what the SAT is all about. It's how I was able to get my SAT up, was to take it multiple times. The advantage for our kids is that they're not paying for SAT School Day. Our school district's supporting that. And they also get that practice in the PSAT. If you could scroll up a little bit. And then you can see PSAT for 10th grade and 11th grade. And the 11th grade test is that also kids can qualify with a certain percentage for a national merit scholarship. And they just have to get a qualifying score to be able to do that. And again, you can see it is very difficult to meet both benchmarks, and we also get comparisons to other schools in the region that also take the test. So there's a whole wide variety of data that we're able to collect, all the way down to demographics. And then if you scroll down again, you can see here is the PSAT 8-9, which is our 8th and 9th graders. And you can see the mean score goes down, obviously, because the composite just isn't as much when the kids take the test.
Michael?
Yep.
If I'm looking at the PSAT for 8-9 fall of 2017.
Yep.
And I go all the way over to the right. It says 207 total tests taken out of 255 enrolled.
Yep.
Now, isn't that test given during the day?
Yep, it's given during the day. So you have kids who are absentee, but we also have kids who are may have specific accommodations or needs where we don't actually have them take the test. And that's decided by a special education teacher, or in certain cases just kids with test anxiety. We just take it case by case, but a majority of the kids take the test.
Okay.
And Michael,
Yeah.
do we have like a breakup of demographics of who's taking the test?
We can, yes, it's a different report, but you can see who's taken the test and how they performed. You know, as expected, there still is a gap, you know, between what we see on a standardized test like the Smarter Balance test, as you would see on the PSAT, and there is a correlation, you know, between the two exams. The College Board and the Common Core Smarter Balance test are actually pretty similar to one another. What we're hoping for as part of ESSA is that they are going to determine whether or not 11th grade is going to use Smarter Balance in the future. It will this year, and it sounds like next it's not yet decided. It's very controversial. And so everyone has a different opinion about whether or not it should be a college entrance exam versus, you know, there's cost, there's philosophy, all of those things. But most important for our kids is that this is, you know, provides them an opportunity each year to see where they are, and then also for us just as an organization to see the patterns and trends where kids are struggling.
We've been using the PSAT and the SAT format for a few years now, like in progressions.
Yes, this is the third year.
And so, as a district, have we found out where acceptable growth is? You know, where we want to like achieve to?
That's a great question. I think that'd be a great next report to show you, so you could see year to year. Because composite score, that mean score doesn't mean as much as looking specifically, for instance, at the reading and writing benchmark to see, because it breaks it down by skill. So you can see areas of growth as a school where kids do really well. Like for instance, our kids really do well in the writing portion of the English language arts part of the test, but there are certain research skills where you can see they struggle and lack in general, right? So you can see trends like that, and I'd be happy to show a more in-depth report that just gives you an example of how could our organization see the trends of strengths and weaknesses that helps us then pin down, are there certain things, whether it's coursework that we're offering or just the way we're offering it, that could support kids in demonstrating their skills more effectively.
Would you, looking at everybody doing this,
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
would you, for our next meeting?
Yes, indeed. All right, we'll move on to Dibbles. This report is a third grade report, and there's lots of numbers here, and I'll do my best to walk through. So we do this test 3 different times during the year. So the beginning of the year, of course, happens in September when students are coming back. Middle of the year, this happened a window at the latter part of January, beginning of February. And what this does is that the Dibbles composite score, which is the top row there, that shows you the number of students who are at the norm benchmark, which means that they are reading based on this normative test, which is a national test, that they are reading at grade level or are able to access grade level content. And then the yellow number is what we call strategic. Those are students who we call are on the bubble. And the vulnerability for third graders in particular, especially at 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, is that this number oftentimes will go down or fluctuate. And one of the key reasons is that these other subscores here, it comes down to, this is called direct oral reading fluency. So their kids are reading a passage at grade level, and you're looking at the rate and the accuracy of the reading. And then that's followed by a retell. Can they retell what they've read? And then can they also then look at vocabulary at the grade level? We call it the days. And are they able to be proficient at that? So it's combining all of those skills together, which then results in a composite score, which tells us the number of students who are accessing core, and then also those students, that 34% and that 9%, that's where we target more specific support. And we have more conversation with our teachers as well as our specialists of what are we doing to intervene. Because one interesting statistic about our 3rd grade, of that 57 to 48%, in the fall, I think it was about 114 kids that were able to maintain where they were or grow more. But then the kids that were still left, they they fluctuate back and forth between that green and up. So you know that there's a level of vulnerability in those cases, and then it's really pinning down like, well, what are those skills? Oftentimes at this age, we forget, and our challenge is that to me, there's three components of reading. There's the phonology, like the sound of making sounds and decoding, and there's the morphology, which a lot of people just assume that reading is very visual, but it's visual and it's sound and it's context. So kids at 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade are having to read at higher levels, and the incremental levels go up much quicker each year for everyone across the country. So we are really building a system of support, something we call it core, like what's the core classroom instruction look like? And then what are the supports that we're putting in place for kids who are still struggling? So this gives you big picture, and then last month I talked about the growth. Sometimes you will find that in that 34% of kids who are what we call intensive, which need intensive support, those are the kids that make the most growth, and that's really, we get down to that granular, saying it wrong. You get down to that level to be able to look at what specific strategies are we using that are having an impact on this student. And that's really where it's really the work that the teachers are doing and the principals and specialists in the schools.
So, Michael,
Yes.
non-mathematic, that's pie. The
Yep.
green part, we're doing well. The little yellow part are the vulnerable students.
Yep.
And the red part is we need to help those kids a little bit more.
Yeah, so it's really looking at what type of, all kids should be receiving high quality instruction from their classroom teacher, right? That's a natural assumption. Then when you're looking at students who are more vulnerable or need more intensive support, then it's looking what are the systems in place at the school that are then providing that additional practice. So when I talk about that phonology and that morphology, a lot of times it's decoding at this age. So kids who struggle to decode, it takes them longer, they're less accurate, and they're less likely to be able to retell effectively.
Right.
So you really have to get down to the science of where are those skill gaps to help support, and that takes practice. Really, that's really what it is. I mean, it's very complex, but it takes just lots and lots of practice.
Yes.
And the challenge for classroom teachers is really being able to provide individualized practice, small group practice, and then ensure too, like when you have kids who are more advanced, that they're also getting opportunities in that core classroom to advance and practice, and so it's very dynamic, right? What I feel is really promising that's happening in our district is, we call it response to intervention and instruction. Every school has systems in place to analyze this data and determine what are we doing to help the students who are struggling. And I think the greatest challenge is how do we best support our teachers in learning how to support kids who struggle to read. Being an elementary teacher myself, or a former elementary teacher, I can say that I taught young kids, and I also taught kids at intermediate levels. And at intermediate levels, we oftentimes just make the assumption that kids will know how to read, and we still need to be able to teach them to read when they struggle to read. And that's part of a big focus on how we're trying to help folks with professional development.
It's really interesting looking at this data and having my first grader learn to read at this time, and his teacher has been doing RAS Kids and another thing called MobiMax, but also sends home like the thing where we read and I circle and do the accuracy and the word count and things like that. So all that to say, I was really impressed, I guess, with the retell scores and the accuracy scores. It seems like I know the composite score is the big thing, but the kids seem to really be able to retell it back, and I think those tools that the teachers are using are really great, right? There's a lot of positive things to say about RAS Kids and MobiMax.
Yeah, that days adjusted score, that's the vocabulary piece, and one of the interesting things about that is we know that we have a vocabulary gap when kids start school. And unless you provide lots of intensive practice at school, I just read today, in order to make up 1,000 words, you have to have hours and hours and hours of instruction and practice to be able to close that gap. And oftentimes you're not able to close that gap because students who come to school where they had a really rich vocabulary, that vocabulary only grows, right? Because as we learn language, that we make connections, you know, like we use the word lion and cat and tiger, and we associate all those things. So when a kid learns about a lynx, that kid who has that vocabulary in mind, they can get to that so much quicker. Where kids don't have that vocabulary, it's a lot more difficult. So that's part of our challenge as we look at increasing these scores.
And just a super nerd data question, the standard deviation numbers, that means that our kids, when the number is smaller, it means our kids are closer to that national benchmark or that normalized benchmark? And then the bigger ones mean they're further away from that?
Yeah, my best way of, yes, it's more range.
Yeah.
So if you look at, if I was able to show you a different report which shows the distribution of students from like the 10th percentile, it's a smaller distribution, and one report I can show you is over years, our bars used to be like this. So we had some kids really high, but we had kids who were really low. Now those bars, that distribution of the norm, like we just have more kids in the 30th percentile and the 60th percentile and 70th percentile. So as a whole group, that bar is crunching down, but we still, as you can see, we still have kids who have intensive needs. What we would say is should be a normative would be about 80% of students in the green. That's really what we want to see by the time kids are in third grade.
Do we have anything like that for math skills? Like
Yes.
Yes.
We have the same report for math. When I share with you, once we adopt our new math curriculum, one of the things we're looking for is a better measure for mathematics that's tied to curriculum, because that is something, the math normative test the kids do now is pretty time consuming, particularly for the specialists who help facilitate it, and that we're looking to make that more efficient, because we don't want to spend so much time testing.
This is one of the, third grade is the first standard benchmark.
Right? Politically it is. I mean, here we know, the nice thing about this is that at first grade we know what the benchmarks are. So as a parent, if you're sitting down with your child's teacher here in a few weeks here in Parkrose at spring conferences, they could be able to tell you where your child is in that norm. And that's, you know, that's a great thing to be reporting, because you know, one, what the school is doing to try to support or push, a student forward.
Yeah, because it captures a moment. Let's say the third grader is beyond the third grade reading level. You want to make sure that those needs are met, or that student might get bored.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Which
so,
is
yeah,
just a
great example. And within that 54%, you have students who are at the 98th percentile nationally. So obviously that tells us a whole different story about, and then that whole aspect of growth that I talked about last month. I would want to know as a parent, sure, my kid's a really high reader, but are they making growth? Like, are they getting opportunities in the classroom to help them grow, at least typically to their peers? Because if you're reading in the 98th percentile, your competition is more stiff, and it's actually harder to grow in that normative way, because these are oftentimes kids who are kind of prodigy readers and probably read faster than I do. Any other questions?
I'm curious, as a district, what our policy is, or what we do, encourage our parents to do at home with our students in terms of reading, like vocabulary, that type of thing, to help with the scores.
Yeah, I think it really is, you have the standard, read your child at home. And reading to kids is a wonderful thing, but it doesn't teach kids how to read. It builds so many other skills. Obviously, there's the social emotional connection, there's the content, there's the story, there's the questions, and that is a whole rich experience that I want every child to have. But in terms of learning to read and the practice of reading, it is so technical that there are certain things that we can have parents practice, like word recognition and talking about vocabulary, but just the science of learning to read is a pretty tough thing, particularly when you have a large number of families that don't speak English as a first language, to be able to help, like for instance, for me and my family, the sounds that I learned to make being a Portuguese speaker before English speaker, was really hard. English is so confusing. You know, to be able to look at the word comb and know that comb ends with a B, but it's not comba, right? Or we in United States, we learn letter names first, right? So we learned like the M is the M. And so like for me in my first language, M would have been M. Michael, right? It's because I would have said the letter name first and then the sound. So just making those connections. So it's a challenge to be able to provide advice around the technical part of learning to read. And that's why it's so important that schools are doing a good job of it.
It is important. I was just thinking in terms of practice. I know for my family, it was always reading 15, 20 minutes before bedtime.
Yeah.
And stressing the vocabulary. And I'm really very encouraging our families to do that.
Yeah, my suggestion, I think a great suggestion for kids who are learning to read is that if we're able to provide them with readers that they are already practicing at school, so that they can bring the text home and it's not, the time with your family member is not this, you know, because it can be hard and frustrating for kids. So if it's something they've practiced, that fluency practice really makes a difference. And it's doable, right? It's practicable. You know, mom can come home, grandma can come home from work, and you can actually sit down and say, like, listen to me read this book. And then you can focus on the fluency and the accuracy of the book versus trying to get into the technicalities of, you know, because every parent's going to be able to help in different ways. But I like practice books. My kid gets practice books, and that's a great way for us to practice reading together.
Michael, do all of our elementaries have SMART?
No.
Just Prescott?
Prescott no longer has SMART.
Oh,
Yeah.
none of them have SMART.
What is SMART? SMART is Start Making a Reader Today. It's a nonprofit that brings in volunteers to the school to read with students, and they provide books to kids throughout the school year. Prescott and Shaver used to have SMART.
Right. Eric, it's a really valuable program.
I remember hearing about it, but you know.
I mean, the kids were so excited when their smart reader would come to get them.
I
And
know.
there was that, and the smart reader knew enough to sit down and, you know, as you're reading the story, you're talking about the story, you're looking for Vernon. And,
You know, juntos aprendemos at Shavers. They do it in Spanish.
yeah.
But you know, I think about the Vietnamese and then the Russian. I mean,
Our Chinese and our Somalians
and then the ones who don't have any literacy at all, like refugee kids. I mean, it's different. And me as a kid, like Michael, who knows his first language, who can pretty much look up a meaning, to somebody who has no alphabet. I mean, you really start from nothing.
Yeah.
Right? So,
Any other questions?
There are some great reading volunteers in the elementary schools, though.
Yeah,
They might not be with the program, but they're awesome.
That's
One of them's Miss Kathy.
that's great. That's great. So I think Christine, you're up next. Christine's going to talk about the attendance. This was a request that the principals did provide a response to all of you around specifics around attendance that you were able to see. She's just going to talk about the different measures, your goal measures compared to the way the state measures attendance.
So in the same way that I've talked to you before about the two different kinds of graduation rates and the confusion about the different graduation rates, this is remarkably similar but different. This is the same thing but for attendance. So the old attendance measure, the measure that we used to use, was the average of the averages. So you have, I think, 10 people there in their average daily attendance, and except for Cherie, nobody is a huge red flag. And so those are all pretty decent average daily attendance, and that would set the school's average daily attendance at 90.8, which would be awesome if it were at the high school. So that's the old attendance measure, the average of the averages. And then the new measure that people are using and talking about is kind of the percent of the percents. Those are the exact same numbers. Those are the exact same students as we had up above. But now if you're looking at how many of the students, what percentage of the students have greater than 90% attendance, that's only a 70% measure. So if you were looking at your 90%ers, you'd be saying that this exact same group of kids is at a 70%. So the exact same data, depending on what you're looking at and how you're choosing to slice and dice it, will give you very different results. Again, not too dissimilarly from what we found out with the graduation data. So average daily attendance versus 90%ers is kind of how we would describe those two measures. Both of them are looked at by ODE. Neither the average daily attendance, the average of averages, is what will be on our report cards when one day we have report cards again, state report cards. Local work that's being done with attendance initiatives tends to be focusing more on the 90% of 90%. Then in the last slide, what I wanted to look at is that neither of those measures is necessarily the best way to look at students who are in need of attendance intervention. Neither measure has any way to account for trajectory, so neither measure lets you know at all a student whose attendance is getting better or a student whose attendance is getting worse. Neither of them looks at progression over time like that. And of course, they're both, as all summative measures tend to be, they're both just kind of a dipstick. You have to go kid by kid to know where you have to intervene. One thing I wanted to be clear on, because I think there was some miscommunication in a prior meeting, Oregon is an ADM state. We are paid based on membership, on enrollment. We are not an ADA state. ADA states are paid based on attendance. I think Arizona is my best example of an ADA state. And that's a really big difference. So I want to make sure that everybody is very clear on the fact that while attendance is important, and there are lots of good reasons to be looking at doing a better job of increasing our attendance, it doesn't impact our funding.
However, it does impact learning.
Absolutely.
Yes. Everything else?
Absolutely. I
So
disagree.
what we're doing is we're looking at, I hate this stuff, 90% of our student body will be at school 90% of the time.
Yeah. Or
Yeah.
better.
And are better. And we're not, the state is not looking at the 10% that we've just left off. Instead of saying 100% of our students will
Yeah.
be at school 90% of the time, we're saying only 90% of our students will be at school 90% of the time.
Yeah, that's what the state is currently defining as chronic absenteeism, or what's the positive? We fussed that it was not good to look at it as chronic absenteeism. It's like habitual attenders or something.
Christine,
Yeah.
is it possible through your systems see the days? I mean, I want to see if there's a systematic thing that we can do as a policymaker that would allow for the system to be more effective at improving. I'm picking up, for example, what can we look at? Is it a data in particular that kids use the most? Is it one demographic in particular that kids are missing? Is there an overrepresentation of a certain demographic group, so that we can see from that lens what's from a different, not just the numbers altogether, but more specific day by day, and maybe the more, I mean, and I'm not sure if it's possible through your systems.
It's totally possible. The high school's got a nice program that they implemented just this year, where we're looking at period by period attendance, because of course there's a fairly significant difference between a high school not particularly regular attender and a third grade not particularly regular attender. So period schools are different in how we look at that, but yes, all of the data about any absenteeism comes into my systems and can be therefore pushed back out. The question that nobody has figured out the answer to is, what data do you use, and then what do you do with it? So we have generated all kinds of different reports. We talk about data in all kinds of different ways. The most important thing to do is look kid by kid. If this kid has 72% attendance, and we think this kid should have 90% attendance, why? What's the story behind that kid? What's the story?
And Christine, isn't that, Eric, this kind of was doing that for me.
Starting.
Yeah, specific things that are being
It
done.
was the specific things in each school, the fact that they're meeting, you know, once a month, or once a week, and is it an alarm clock that's needed? Then an alarm clock is purchased for the family, that they're meeting with the parents and putting together parental plans.
I mean, when we talked about attendance a few months ago, it's great that people with good intentions, they come together and I mean, and they talk. I mean, what I would say is invite people with different ideas to kind of see so like if we all talk about the same thing and our ideas, we don't get out of a group and we don't get different perspectives. But I was talking, and Karen is not here for her to talk about, but you know, I spoke to Karen and she said, you know, I talked to David Douglas, I talked to superintendent, like we meet superintendents and you know, we see these challenges, some districts more than others. And then I mentioned, well, you know, what are some other districts doing that can perhaps that have the same demographic that can, you know, help, you know, so we don't have to copy the entire models, but if there's some good idea that is probably happening out there, you know, we also have good ideas that can be copied elsewhere and replicated. And you know, that's what I was thinking, like where I work, for example, we have a different system of Wednesdays, which is later rather than earlier. And I wonder sometimes if the other system, I don't know how that will work, I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure which is the more challenging or if it's better, the system that we have in place. I'm just curious, that's all.
Well, and Florence, who's with David Douglas, and representatives from Centennial and Gresham, and Portland and Parkrose, we've been meeting together for a few years. We were sort of brought together by All Hands Raised originally, and in part also by MESD. So there have been groups of different people, both inside schools, different school districts, inside schools and outside schools, trying to look at what data do we need to look at? What interventions do we need to put in place? What are kind of good benchmark cutoff places? And it just is a problem that we're all trying to figure out how to solve.
And you alluded to earlier, and this is what I'm going to make a question about, when is attendance actually attendance? When is it like the beginning of the day? But you know, you broke it down like the high school and period schools are a little different.
Yeah.
But
And at elementary schools, we take attendance 2 times. So at attendance at an elementary school, you can miss half a day or a full day. It's 0.5 or 1. And then at the high school, and middle school, sorry, at both secondary schools, it's period attendance.
And that creates that, you know, kind of difference in numbers, because obviously it oftentimes becomes more pervasive as kids are older. And that could be simply because a kid's skipping a certain class, right? And that's why, you know, the policies and the strategies you'll see from each of the schools are slightly different. But I would just piggyback on what Christine's saying. There is a lot of countywide, regional work. Measure 98 specifically, dropout prevention, a big part of the dollars are intended to look at what are we doing for ninth graders to ensure that they're not only getting their credits, but they're actually attending school, and what are the strategies. So we're able to sit down with all of the districts and talk about those strategies. One trend I will tell you that is something that's been going on for a really long time is actually our youngest kids, our kindergarten students, miss a lot of school in general. And something I would always share with kindergarten parents is that I know that it's hard to release that responsibility to let someone take care of your baby all day, because 5 is little and it's still, they're precious. You know, they're precious at all ages, but 5 in particular, it's hard to let them go. And so when they're not feeling well or they're slightly sick, it's just more likely that parents will keep their kids home. So kindergartners, we have lots of kindergartners that miss a lot more than 10%. So imagine if you have that kindergarten issue, that could impact your ending number as a whole elementary school. particularly with individual students, because you have certain kids who may miss 40% of their school year, and that impacts that bigger number. And those oftentimes you're just trying to convince the parent it's okay, whether they're scared or, everything from pulling them away from the crying arms of mom, which
And it
every
does
teacher
happen.
and every administrator can tell you many stories about that. But
Yes.
that gives you an example of when you're having conversations with families that that's a hard separation for a lot of families.
The cultural piece is also a big thing. I mean,
Yeah.
you're sending out your kids to somebody who may not speak the same language. Yeah.
Scary.
Thanks, Christine.
All right, Mary, I think you're up.
All right. So I have two agenda items. The first is just to tell you about midpoints and how they're going. So midpoint is a kind of collaborative meeting where teacher and principal get together. They look at the teacher's goals that they set around their student learning goals, look at the progress, how it's going, talk about what's working, what's not working, what they might change to move forward for the rest of the year. And so those have started. They should be wrapped up by the 1st, although we have a handful that are happening on the 2nd because of our snow days and things like that, and the principals had to adjust some of their schedules. So that's happening now, and word is that they're going well. Any questions about midpoint? And the next thing to share on is the Parkrose School District Job Fair Open House. This is occurring March 15th from 4 to 7, and it will be at the high school. The job fair kind of has...
14th or 15th?
Pardon me?
14th or 15th?
15th, March 15th. It has two objectives. So one objective is for folks external to Parkrose, folks in the community, parents of our kids, to let them know about the types of jobs we offer, how they're convenient and flexible if they're looking for part-time work, competitive wage, things like that. So to start to make them aware and hopefully get them involved. And then there's an internal component to it. And the internal audience are our current classified people. As you know, we have a fair amount of our classified people who don't work a full 8-hour day. And for many people, that's what they want. But there are others that, if they could, would like to be working 8 hours a day. And so this job fair element will be for them to help them start to see how they might pair up a job in food service with transportation, or a job as an educational assistant with food service. Transpo and educational assistants don't work real well in terms of their schedules. But we want to let people know that's an option, and if they're interested, this will really be happening in 18-19. I mean, schedules are set now, but they could come, they could talk to the other areas, and those supervisors can start to get a list of people that are actually interested in trying to do these kind of combo jobs, and we can start to help people who want that 8 hours a day, be able to meet that need. Then the other objective for our internal folks is around the goal of starting to grow our own teachers. So we'll have Concordia University there. I'm waiting to hear from Warner Pacific. And then Horace Mann will be there, who can talk to them about financing around their degree and the different options in terms of the loan forgiveness and how that works, and some of the different scholarships that are out there. So we're hoping to invite anybody, classified. If you've thought about a teacher program, here's a place to come. It's a little, less formal. You're not, committing to an appointment with an advisor, but you can sit and ask some questions, and hopefully maybe start to see that it is something you can do while still working for a while. And then there are certainly financial options for folks. And so those are our two audiences. We will have all groups there. We're going to have a bus, so they can go get on the bus, sit on the bus, see what a bus is like. The maintenance folks will be there. If anybody's interested in custodial work, they might walk them around and say on a typical shift, here's kind of what you're doing, here's what you're working on. Food service to see the kitchen. Ellen is working on hopefully having some light refreshments, so it'll be probably where the food is, but then they can see a full kitchen in swing, the type of equipment, that kind of thing. We'll have a table for, of course, educational assistants. And then there'll be two things they can do in addition to put their name on the list for interest in a job. They could also just sign up to be a sub. And then we'll start to create sub lists around custodians, around hopefully maybe down the road school secretaries, but some different things where, hey, I'd love to be involved, but I don't want a part-time or full-time job. And the other thing we're gonna try and see if people have interest, maybe they're like, I don't know, I'm not sure if I could, is a bus really as crazy as my thoughts are? They could sign up and do a job shadow. So they could come, they could hang out with the custodian for a shift, they could sit on the bus, they could walk around with an educational assistant. So another way that they can kind of tip their toe in the water, if you will, and see if this is even anything that they would want to consider. We will have some raffle items, so I'm hoping that encourages some folks to come, mostly our internal folks, I think, and some light refreshments. So that's kind of our plan. This is a little different from years past, which was kind of more an hour, looked like about an hour kind of workshop on jobs inside Parkrose, and it was a little bit more tactical on how you do it. This is more where we say, well, here's how you do it, now go talk to these people that actually do it, So bus drivers will be there, educational assistants will be there, so that they can talk to the real folks on the ground if they want. Our promotion starts this week, so you'll start to see flyers in the schools. We'll have, of course, an email out to all classified, Facebook, the typical PR, Facebook, things like that. I'm hoping that principals will agree to some reader board announcements for a while, because that'd be a great way to get folks from the community who aren't even coming into the schools. And then we're hoping to get some around the community, kind of in key places where people are. So if you have any suggestions on a place where we should have, put a flyer or whatnot, please let us know. But that's our goal now for the next 2 weeks, is get as much word out, and we'll see how it goes.
Are we still looking for bus drivers?
We are.
We are, okay.
Yes.
Always.
Always.
I've seen them stop.
Really, always
Alright.
bus drivers, always food service.
All right.
For a while there, we had a really big need on educational assistance. That's kind of slowed down a little bit, but we'll have a whole new kind of, some turnover for the next school year. So we'll already be starting to create some lists. If anything, so I can just have a list of people, which is, hey, want to let you know these jobs just opened. So we kind of start ending up like a job list. That way they don't have to remember all the time to come to our website and see if something's out there. So
Did we ever put in place the flexible bus driver?
we have had that posted. We've had that posted since November. And we have had no applicants.
How's that work? Flexible, like whenever we call or?
That was, the position that was created out of this year's bargaining, where the job is really Monday through Sunday. It's 40 hours, but it could be that you're, driving a bus on Saturday, taking a team to Eugene, and maybe Wednesday night. So not necessarily a set schedule every day, thinking maybe that's attractive to someone. We've had it out on Craigslist routinely. We've had it out on our website. Just not getting any interest. And we're not alone. All the districts it's constant bus drivers that they're looking for.
I was gonna suggest just the community boards, the local libraries, Midland and Rockwood.
Okay.
They have boards for posting things.
Awesome.
Gregory Heights is the closest one to us, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, but Midland and Rockwood, a lot of our families are in that area as well.
Okay.
A couple of languages, Spanish.
Yes, we're gonna have them translated and I'm gonna be putting out an email tomorrow to interpreters here to see who could work the job fair if we need them. So, probably Russian, Spanish for sure, and maybe Vietnamese,
kind of, who's in the system and who wants to do it.
Nice work.
Thank you.
Thanks, Trent. All right, Ms. Cherie. Let's hear about lead and radon.
There's exciting stuff at the end, right?
Hey, I was reading that 12:3 last night, I couldn't sleep afterwards.
I know, isn't it? It's just so exciting.
It is amazing.
Would you like the OAR? It's even more exciting.
No.
Oh, well, I thought I wouldn't lighten your palate then. I have to admit, there's one little error on the bottom, very last sentence. This evaluation started in October. This is a long process for radon. So as I was rushing to get the things done for the board, I failed to read that last sentence, so it's my error.
We blame it on the snow right now.
Yeah, I can't blame it on the snow because I was actually here.
I know,
So-
but we'll blame it
Okay.
on the snow.
So on the lead testing, on an update, we are doing really well on the lead testing.
Yeah, we are.
And as of the time that I did this report, we still had 3 that were outstanding. 2 at Knott, and we had 1 at Prescott. 2 or 3 days later, I get a Pyxis lab. So now the Knott sites are clear.
Yay.
Prescott has actually gone down from where they were. So now Prescott's, it's on its 3rd phase of testing. So what we're doing now is we're going to bring in basically a rotor-rooter kind of tube to, because the 2 adjoining rooms have passed and very low. So there's something in that one room because to tear the thing out of the wall means going inside the concrete.
Wait a second, is this radon or lead?
That's lead.
Okay.
And I don't want to tear the wall out, so we're going to do a little rotor-rootering and flushing and flushing and flushing and hope it comes out and then retest. Because to replace the pipes, it means I have to tear out the wall, and that's quite extensive. And the filter that we can get doesn't necessarily do the lead. It does some other things, but not all the lead that we would want. So that's where we are right now. I'm trying to do a 4th phase of mitigate the problem on that one. But for lead testing, that's what we're down to. And we do it, this is the second of every 5-year rotation, so we're doing really well. Radon, on the other hand, not so well. So every school where we are now, we have 2 that we absolutely don't have to do for the 10 years. That would be Shaver in the district office. But the other ones we're going to have to do a little bit more frequent. Prescott had 2 samples. What happened is we brought, as I said on the bottom, Cascade Radon. They're coming in to do some, how do we fix that radon? And radon is the gas that comes up through the ground and it percolates, and it may or may not cause any problems, but when you get above a point or 2, then you have a problem. Anywhere between 4 and 8, you have to test and come up with an analysis of how to fix it. So Prescott, we brought in Cascade Greta, and there's only 3 vendors in this region that actually does this work. So we're really strapped for trying to get their attention. Since Portland and Beaverton are taking up the other 2 vendors, this is what we had. So, so Prescott is on its, we did the temporary fix. Temporary fix was working, so we did a permanent fix. Now, the bad side of that, if you read comment D, the Prescott down on 5D, the cost of Prescott to fix that one little area, 2 little areas, $8,000.
52.
$8,052. That's to fix that. Now, they will test it over the next 10 years, and if something really goes wrong, then we'll work with the contractor, but that's a very, very, very expensive fix for something that was just smallly out of the 4.0 range.
Question.
Yes.
One, as I'm reading this, and I'm seeing that they want to work with the flashing. The flashing is on the roof.
Right. So
Radon, are they thinking it's not escaping?
So what was the way the fix is, what has to happen, you have to take it outside,
Right.
revent it. So what we've done is create a ventilation system inside the, in one of the walls,
Okay.
instead of going in and around, and it's taking it up one of the ventilation traps inside the walls, instead of taking it out the side of the building, up beside the building, across and up, instead of going around. we put it through an empty space I had in one of the walls, and if you know where Prescott is, when you go up the stairwell from where the cafeteria is, there's a little break in the wall that's about this wide.
Yep.
So we have a tube that's gonna go up that. But since I just repaired the roof,
Yes.
it's a little bit of a pickle, so, the flashing, or repairing the roof was part of the estimate,
Okay.
okay? But I didn't want to tear up the roof, but I was either going to tear up the brand new awning and the side flashing that I put on the roof and then go all the way across to get up. So it was easier to do it this way. I saved about $1,500.
I was gonna say, where is this coming from?
This, because it's a health and safety, it's, this portion, this small portion is gonna be paid out of the bond. Because
Okay.
I had some money set aside that I was using, so hopefully this and not, which I think will be small values, I'll be able to do out of the bond.
Good.
No, I don't think that's gonna work in Russell, because Russell, knowing that it's about 30 classrooms, and about 20 of the classrooms are affected. So as you see, Russell is the one that's causing a little bit of a problem. So we have got a temporary fix in there now. We've had 2 temporary fixes. They both have brought down the numbers, but the cafeteria seems to be in a, I think a meteorite is underneath the cafeteria, and I would like to have a bomb in it. But that's not gonna work. So right now, we're doing a temporary fix, and the problem is, we will have to drill into the concrete, to the concrete slab. Well, kids being in the classroom going, it's not really a good educational model, so we have to wait until spring break.
Okay.
So that, along with the knot, it also is gonna have to be in the slab, so that one's gonna be a little bit of an issue.
So, and Sherry, so it's pretty much drilling the floor and then adding more concrete to the same floor, and then that will take care of it?
What it does is it drills a core hole, kinda like if you took here,
Mhm.
right? You drill a core hole and down into the earth, and then you put another pipe to evaporate the air and the whatever's down there that's
Yeah.
causing the combustion, right? Because the ground is too tight, it's not loose, so it's really thick, it's causing the problem. So now we're gonna try to loosen it up and bring some of that combustion out. So it means we have to drill a core hole into the concrete floor, dig a pipe down in there, and then fill it back up, then put a pipe through either side of the wall, all the way through it, or up through the ceiling. Now, since Russell has got about 4 or 5 different areas, that's, if you figured $8,000 for one area in Prescott, this will be quite expensive for Russell. So we're trying to figure out a way that we can come around it. Since we also just did all the outside roofing of Russell.
Yeah. But once you fix it, we don't have to test again for 10 years, is
Right.
that correct?
It will be under all 3 sites that are under the mitigation issues will be a 10-year contract
Right.
that they will continually test these programs. But we will have to test every year for all radon, for all if they're in these areas and have failed, we need to go back in and retest them ourselves, not just them. So we will be retesting a few of those areas. And the fab, because it was in the area that didn't really need to have people down there, we don't have a plan for that, and for the state, we're gonna be fine.
Good.
So,
Our years put those in bonds, so we still have.
there's still,
monies.
yes, there is some money left in the bond. And we did a discussion with Karen and the group of what that looked like, and I itemized the expenses about a month ago with her, with what it was, and basically it's Tom and I saving money from a few of our projects has allowed me to, and I had a couple projects that we thought we were gonna do, but we don't have to do now. So those 2 projects and the savings are gonna allow me to possibly pay for this process. So, and if you compare it to Portland Public Schools, their radon is rated at about $10 million right now.
Wow.
And that's only for about a third of their schools. So,
Like the work you're doing.
so we're getting there. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Moving on. PFA, monthly report. Back from the mountain.
Been back for a little bit. It was awesome.
Yeah, so if you don't know, for the 3rd year in a row, I've
gone up to the Mazama Lodge at Government Camp with my 4th graders for 3 days, 2 nights for like a winter outdoor school. And the prior 2 years it was just my class. This year my teaching partner went. So we had another really good, fun time and educational time. So yeah. I have a few things, some upcoming dates to talk about. Saturday and Sunday, March 9th and 10th, is the Oregon PAC Convention. It's formerly the PI Convention. This year it'll be at the Benson Hotel. It's this little dumpy place in downtown Portland, if you don't know. So I'm going to be going to that with a few other members. And so there's going to be candidates there, and so OEA will, listen to them and have a chance to talk with them and possibly endorse or support some of them. Middle school and high school have their annual Avid Showcase upcoming. I believe it's Thursday, March 8th was the date that I was given. Mary talked a little bit about Midpoint Goal conferences wrapping up. Mine was supposed to be last Thursday, so I got it all together Wednesday night, and Katie and I did that today. So some schools are finished, others are finishing up now. It's generally goes by pretty quickly and smoothly. This time of the year, however, there are decisions being made as far as retirements of employees or some of those probationary employees that are in their 1st or 2nd year, and some tough decisions are made regarding renewing contracts. So it can be a stressful time of the year for some folks, and so I and other people throughout the union are hearing concerns from some people, and so Wednesday, Mary and I and Karen have our monthly management meeting, so we're going to have a discussion around that and figure out a plan for what's happening here. Anybody have any questions about that in particular? The last thing I have on my agenda is something that I think a lot of people feel strongly about, and it's been in the media a lot after the tragedy in Florida of arming teachers at school. I made some social media posts on behalf of our union. I made it clear that those thoughts were mine, but I've done a lot of reaching out to folks in Parkrose at a lot of levels, classified, certified, a couple of principals. Karen and I had about a 15-minute phone conversation on Friday. We're going to talk more Wednesday. I'm talking to other principals and superintendents in the area. My goal is to spearhead like an East County statement on the issue and get as much, I certainly have my strong opinions on the idea, but I don't want to sit here and say this is PFA's position if I'm not accurately reflecting what everybody thinks. So myself and some other people are trying to reach out and gather that information before we do another one. I spoke with Karen and was delighted to hear that we pretty much agreed personally on everything, and she liked my ideas, and we're going to discuss a joint Parkrose / PFA, possibly school board statement on this. I don't think you can avoid the social media posts from a lot of people that are teachers and how they feel about this. But one of the things that I like from Karen, we both agree, is, sometimes we could care less about what the rest of Portland or East County is doing, because Parkrose is our own thing and we have our own ideas, and we do that. And so she feels very strongly about some things. There's a couple of protests and movements upcoming in March and April, and we are going to discuss how Parkrose may take part in some of those things.
And I'm not being rude, but you have 3 seconds.
Oh, nope, and so perfectly timed.
One, and this might be against the line it is.
Oh, turn the camera off?
No, because I don't like that way. I was totally blown away by your posting.
In a good or bad way? Well, I don't know what that means, blown
In
away.
a good way.
Okay, good.
In fact, Karen and I talked about it on Friday. I've thought you reached down inside that fiery soul of yours and said it very, very well.
I appreciate that.
Until she gets back and we have put together a plan to involve the board in this discussion, there will be something brought to us to react to.
I would like if we all kind of, as you know, three-headed monsters, not the right word, union, board, you know, admin, just Parkrose.
And I think from my experience on Friday, that's not gonna be an impossibility.
Sure.
I thank you for your involvement. I mean, it is teachers like you who make a difference. It's not just in the classroom, but in the community. You are affected by this more so than most people.
Sure.
And I wouldn't be surprised if maybe that classified employees would like to participate as well.
Absolutely. I've tried to reach out to Rick. I'm not sure if he's sick today, why he's not here. But like I said, I want to involve as many people and get their input on this. I'm the kind of person that likes to kind of act quick, and I feel like every day we wait is just another day we've waited to say something, but I think it's important to do it the right way. And if Parkrose is the one out here in East County that leads the way, then so be it.
Amen.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 12. Any citizen comments for agenda items? Seeing none, we move into action items. Do I hear a motion to accept or reject the classified employees appreciation resolution that Sonia so beautifully read?
I move to accept the classified employee appreciation resolution.
I second.
Would you like to discuss? Okay. All of you in favor of accepting the classified employees appreciation resolution signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Motion carries. I don't need to do the other. B, accept or reject the open enrollment and inter-district transfer announcement 2018-19. Earl, see you again. Open enrollment, 110 spots K-12, any grade, any Oregon school, inter-district agreements, that would be from district to district to district, 20 spots, juniors and seniors only. Do I have a motion to accept or reject?
I move that we accept the open enrollment and inter-district transfer announcement 2018-2019 for 110 spots K-12, any grade, any Oregon school inter-district transfer, 20 spots, juniors and seniors only.
Do I hear a second?
I second.
Hearing a motion and a second, does anybody have anything to say? Seeing none, all of you in favor of accepting signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passed. Accept or reject 2018-2019 Multnomah Education Service District Local Service Plan menu. That was the general thing that we saw as Michael talked about it. Do I hear a motion?
I move that we accept the 2018-2019 Multnomah Education Service District Local Service Plan menu.
I second.
Any need to discuss? Seeing none. Thank you, Brett. All those in favor of accepting the 2018-19 Multnomah ESD Local Service Plan signify by saying yes. Yes. Motion carries. Correspondence and announcements. I am not going to read all of these because,
We had discussion of future items.
well, we haven't gotten there yet. Oh, sorry. I skipped. Number 14. See, it was too small. Number 14, discussion of future agenda items, 8 minutes. Does anybody have something they would like to see if the board would like to talk about?
Maybe adding on to upcoming events for next business cycle, the March meeting in Salem, for the bonds. Because it's not on here, so just kind of like a.
Oh, it's the
Just adding it to.
oh, the unliability, the
Funded accrued
underfunded
liability.
liability
Yeah.
meeting?
Yeah, just to add it to next next March agenda,
Yes,
so.
It's the 22nd.
Yeah,
22nd?
22nd,
22nd of March,
in
right?
Salem.
And so discuss what you're asking is if we discuss it at the March board meeting.
No, whether we just put it on the agenda, because it's not on this agenda, I just want to put it on. So I kind of remember myself, I mean, I can put it in my
Oh, you,
Gmail
okay,
calendar,
so
but
you
it's-
want it
I
on
just want to put it in the agenda.
upcoming events?
Yes.
Aha. I can make it even easier for us. You ready? Andrea?
Invite?
Thank you. Done. It's a training session,
Okay.
so I don't know why we wouldn't all could go. We would have to take the van, I guess.
Right.
We've got a big one now.
Yeah. So,
Good.
and with understanding that I still get to sit shotgun and Cherie drives. Are there any other future agenda items? Okay, we all agree that we want to have, no, we don't have to agree on that, it's done. Going to correspondence. A very, very nice letter from the School Superintendent Association to Karen. I know that you all read it last night. And if you haven't, go back and do it. I think congratulations on becoming 2018 State Superintendent of the Year. The achievement acknowledges you as one who personifies exemplary leadership on behalf of public education throughout your school district, community, and state of Oregon. And it goes on. As I travel,
Oh, I thought you weren't gonna
And
read
it
it.
goes-
I know, I thought
And
you
it
were gonna
wins.
read it.
I was getting into it. As my voice is getting deeper and deeper. The next one was from her meeting in Nashville, where all the superintendents of the year for each state went, and that was that.